In the vast expanse of space, humanity had always assumed we were the cowards of the galaxy. For centuries after first contact, other species looked down on us, mocking our cautious nature and our obsession with safety protocols. They called us the warning label species, the ones who put guardrails on everything and triple-checked every airlock. But they never understood that what they saw as cowardice was actually our greatest strength. I still remember the day everything changed. I was working as a safety inspector on the intergalactic station Horizon when the void storms first appeared. These mysterious tears in space-time started appearing randomly throughout the galaxy, swallowing entire planets whole. The mighty Zixtarian Empire, with their unbreakable battleships, tried to fight them head-on. The Malorians, with their advanced energy manipulation, attempted to contain them. The Quantum Collective tried to understand them through pure logic. They all failed. But we humans, we ran, we evacuated, we planned, we prepared, and most importantly, we documented everything. While other species rushed into battle, we were busy creating evacuation protocols, studying storm patterns, and designing early warning systems. They called us cowards for retreating. They laughed when we spent resources on building bunkers instead of weapons. That laughter stopped when the first void storm hit the Centauri hub. Among all the advanced species present, it was the human evacuation teams who saved the most lives. Our excessive safety measures and paranoid backup systems suddenly didn't seem so foolish anymore. As I stand here now, watching through the reinforced observation deck as another storm approaches, I can't help but feel a bitter sense of vindication. The same aliens who once mocked us now come to us for protection. They've finally realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're scared and prepare accordingly. But this story isn't about proving others wrong. It's about what happened next, when we discovered something in those storms that would change everything. Something that only a species so focused on safety and survival could have noticed. The patterns weren't random at all. The storms were trying to tell us something, and our cautious, methodical approach had given us the tools to understand it. Commander Chen of the Earth Defense Force always says, "True bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway." As I review the data streaming in from our latest storm tracking satellites, I realize we're about to put that philosophy to the ultimate test. The next void storm is different, bigger, and it's heading straight for Earth. Our sensors indicate it's carrying something inside, something alive. Every other species is telling us to abandon our homeworld, to run while we still can. But for the first time in our history, we're going to do what everyone least expects from humanity. We're going to stay and face it, not because we're not afraid, we're absolutely terrified, but because our cowardly preparation has given us something no other species has, a plan. And maybe, just maybe, being the only species brave enough to embrace our fears will end up saving not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The storm is nearly here now. The evacuation alarms are blaring, and our defense systems are charging up. Everything we've learned, everything we've prepared for, has led to this moment. And as I watch the swirling void approaching Earth, I can't help but wonder, what will the rest of the galaxy think when they discover that the cowards they mocked were the only ones brave enough to discover the truth? The real question is, are they ready for what we found? The void storm hit Earth's atmosphere exactly how our simulations predicted, a massive swirling vortex of dark energy that made the northern lights look like a child's nightlight. But what none of our calculations could have prepared us for was the sound. A deep, resonating hum that vibrated through every bone in your body, like a whale song from the depths of space itself. I watched from the command center as our planetary shield grid activated, something the other species had dismissed as a waste of resources. Why build defenses against the inevitable? They'd asked. But humanity had learned long ago that nothing was truly inevitable if you prepared enough. The shields weren't designed to stop the storm. We knew that was impossible. Instead, they were meant to guide it, like a river flowing around carefully placed stones. The data streams were overwhelming our systems, but among the chaos, patterns began emerging. Dr. Roberts, our lead storm analyst, had noticed something peculiar weeks ago, The storms weren't just destroying things, they were rearranging them. Quantum signatures showed matter being broken down and reassembled in ways that defied our understanding of physics. It wasn't random destruction, it was communication. That's when we detected the signal. Buried deep within the storm's electromagnetic interference was a repeating sequence, mathematical constants that couldn't be natural. Pi, Fibonacci sequences, prime numbers. Whoever or whatever was inside the storm was trying to talk to us. And thanks to humanity's paranoid habit of monitoring everything, we were the first species to notice. The alien races that had sought refuge on Earth watched in horror as we activated the receiver array. Another, unnecessary system we built just in case. They begged us to run, to abandon Earth like they'd abandoned their worlds. But running had never been our endgame. All our seeming cowardice, all our preparation had been leading to this moment. Through the observation windows, I could see the storm's center beginning to shift. The swirling darkness parted like curtains, revealing something that made my heart stop. Geometric shapes, perfectly formed, floating in the void. Not natural formations, but structures. Ancient structures that looked like they'd been built by hands that understood mathematics in ways we were only beginning to grasp. The other species had been so busy trying to fight or flee the storms that they'd never stopped to consider why they were happening in the first place. But humans, with our endless what-if scenarios and backup plans, had documented every detail. We'd seen the patterns. We built the tools to understand them. And now, as the massive structures descended through our atmosphere, protected by our shield grid, we were about to make first contact with something far beyond anything we'd imagined. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, calm despite the situation. All stations, maintain protocols. This is what we've prepared for. And she was right. While other species had built weapons, we built bridges. While they developed bigger ships, we developed better communication systems. Our very nature, the caution and preparation they'd mocked, had made us uniquely qualified for this moment. The structures were nearly at ground level now, their surfaces reflecting our world like massive mirrors. Inside the command center, the signal was getting stronger, clearer. What we were about to learn would change everything we thought we knew about the universe. But first, we had to face our greatest fear, the unknown. And as the structures touched down on Earth's surface, sending ripples through the ground that we could feel even through the reinforced bunker, one thing became crystal clear. Sometimes the greatest acts of bravery come from those who know exactly how much they have to lose. The geometric structures had been on Earth for 6 hours when we finally decoded enough of the signal to understand its basic meaning. It wasn't just a message. It was a warning. The beings inside, who called themselves the architects, hadn't come to invade. They'd come to save us from something far worse than void storms. Through our translation matrices, we learned that the storms weren't weapons or natural phenomena. They were side effects of a cosmic war we couldn't even comprehend. The architects were refugees, running from entities they called the Void Hunters, ancient beings that consumed entire galaxies, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. The irony wasn't lost on us. The architects had chosen Earth precisely because of our reputation for cowardice. They'd watched as we built our bunkers, designed our evacuation protocols, and created our early warning systems. While other species boasted about their battle prowess, we'd been accidentally preparing for this exact scenario. The atmosphere in the command center was thick with tension as we processed this information. The alien refugees who'd mocked us were now silent, watching as we activated our global defense network, not to fight, but to hide. Our excessive stealth technology, designed to conceal entire planets, was exactly what the architects needed. They're coming. The translated message flashed across our screens. The Void Hunters had followed the architects through the storms, and Earth was now their target. We had less than 12 hours before they arrived. The other species started panicking, demanding we use their weapons, their technology. But Commander Chen stood firm. "We stick to the plan," she announced, her voice steady despite the chaos. "This is what humans do best. We don't win by being the strongest or the bravest. We win by being prepared. The architects had chosen us for a reason. Our bunkers could shelter their people. Our stealth systems could hide their structures. Our evacuation protocols could save both our species. As we worked to integrate their technology with ours, the architects shared more of their story. They'd once been like the other alien races, proud warriors who faced every threat head-on, but that approach had cost them everything. Only those who learned to hide, to plan, to prepare had survived. In humanity's supposed weakness, they'd recognized their own salvation. The first signs of the Void Hunters appeared exactly as predicted, massive distortions in space-time, like wounds in the fabric of reality itself. Our long-range sensors, designed to detect the smallest anomalies, gave us the warning we needed. Every human on Earth knew their role, knew exactly where to go and what to do. Years of drills and preparation were finally paying off. But something was wrong. The hunters' patterns weren't matching any of the architects' predictions. They were adapting, changing their approach. Our careful plans, all our preparation, suddenly seemed insufficient. Even the architects looked worried, their crystalline forms dimming with concern. As I stared at the sensor readings, watching the hunters approach, I realized we had minutes, not hours, to come up with a new plan. All our preparation, all our careful planning, had brought us to this moment. And now, in the final hour, we would have to do the one thing humans feared most: improvise. The fate of not just humanity, but perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on what we did next. And as Commander Chen gathered us for one final briefing, I couldn't help but wonder, had our greatest weakness actually been our greatest strength all along, or had we simply been preparing for the wrong kind of courage? The answer would come soon enough. The Void Hunters were almost here. The Void Hunters didn't attack like we expected. Instead of the overwhelming force the architects had warned us about, they simply stopped. 3 massive entities, each larger than Earth's moon, hovering at the edge of our solar system. Our sensors showed them just waiting. That's when we realized our greatest fear. They weren't hunting anymore. They were hurting us. More void storms began appearing, not just around Earth, but in a precise pattern throughout our solar system. The hunters were cutting off every escape route, using the storms like a net. The architects' crystalline structures pulsed with patterns we'd never seen before, patterns of fear. They'd fallen for this trap before on countless other worlds. But then one of our junior analysts noticed something extraordinary in the data feeds. The void storms weren't just barriers. They were mirrors, reflecting and amplifying energy patterns. All those years of humanity obsessively documenting every detail about the storms had given us insights even the architects had missed. We hadn't just been gathering data. We'd been gathering ammunition. Commander Chen called an emergency meeting in the deepest level of our bunker complex. The hunters aren't trying to destroy us, she explained, her voice tight with controlled tension. They're trying to force us to fight. Every species they've encountered has eventually tried to battle their way out. That's what they feed on, the energy of resistance. The revelation hit everyone like a physical blow. The other alien refugees, who had been demanding we use their weapons, suddenly understood. Their military solutions, their advanced combat technology, that's exactly what the hunters wanted. Every civilization that fought back had played right into their hands. But humans, we'd spent centuries being called cowards for running away, for hiding, for choosing caution over conflict. We developed technology not to fight, but to vanish. Our planetary stealth systems weren't weapons. They were cloaks. And now, those same systems were giving us an idea so crazy, so seemingly cowardly, that it just might work. "We're going to run," Commander Chen announced, but not like anyone has ever run before. The plan was audacious. We would use the architect's knowledge combined with our stealth technology to do something unprecedented. We weren't going to try to escape the hunter's trap. We were going to take the trap with us. The other species thought we'd lost our minds. The architects were skeptical, but intrigued. Nobody had ever tried to repropose the void storms before. Everyone had been too busy trying to fight them or escape them to consider actually using them. But humans, we'd spent generations studying them, documenting every detail, preparing for every possibility. As we began redirecting power to our global network of cowardly stealth generators, something unexpected happened. The patterns within the void storms began to change, resonating with our technology in ways our simulations hadn't predicted. We weren't just going to hide Earth. We were about to attempt something far more ambitious. The hunters sensed something was different. They started to move closer, their massive forms distorting space itself. But for once, their approach didn't fill us with terror, because they didn't realize that what they thought was their trap was about to become ours. As Commander Chen gave the order to initiate our desperate plan, I looked at the sensor readings one last time. What we were about to attempt had never been done before, had never even been conceived of by species far more advanced than us. But then again, no other species had spent so long being called cowards. The question wasn't whether we were brave enough to try. The question was, what happens when the galaxy's greatest cowards finally decide to show everyone what true courage looks like? Our plan was beautiful in its simplicity. We weren't going to fight the void storms or run from them. We were going to become them. Using our planetary stealth systems combined with the architect's technology, we began absorbing the energy patterns of the storms, letting them flow through our defensive grid rather than trying to resist them. It was like learning to float in a cosmic ocean instead of swimming against the current. The Void Hunters didn't react at first. Why would they? No species had ever tried something so seemingly suicidal before. But as our stealth field began to resonate with the storm patterns, something extraordinary happened. The storms weren't just weapons or traps. They were doorways. Doorways that the hunters had been using to traverse the galaxy, hurting and consuming civilizations. And now we were learning to pick the lock. Commander Chen's voice was steady as she gave the order. Initiate protocol reflection. Across the planet, thousands of stealth generators activated simultaneously, each one tuned to a specific frequency we discovered in the storm patterns. The other alien refugees watched in disbelief as Earth itself began to shimmer, like a mirage in the desert. The hunters finally realized something was wrong. They surged forward, their massive forms distorting space-time in their rush to stop whatever we were doing. But they were too late. The very energy they used to travel through the storms was being redirected, reflected back at them through our network of generators. We weren't fighting their power. We were borrowing it. The architect's crystalline structures began resonating with our technology, amplifying the effect. Their ancient knowledge combined with our paranoid preparation was creating something entirely new. The hunters had never faced a species that turned their own storms against them. They'd never encountered a civilization that had spent centuries preparing for the worst possible scenarios. Then came the moment that changed everything. As the hunters tried to escape, they found themselves trapped in their own reflected energy. The storms they used to corner us were now a maze of mirrors, each one reflecting their power back at them in an endless loop. Their massive forms began to fracture, their connection to our reality weakening. But that's when we discovered the truth that even the architects hadn't known. The Void Hunters weren't hunting us. They were running too. Through the fragments of their dissolving forms, we caught glimpses of something vast and dark pursuing them across the cosmos. Something that made the hunters look like minnows in comparison. In their final moments, as their forms collapsed into the reflected storms, the hunters sent us a message. It wasn't a threat or a curse. It was a warning. They'd been trying to gather enough energy to escape something far worse than themselves. And now, we'd inherited their role as the last line of defense against a threat even they couldn't face. Commander Chen made the call that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Continue the reflection protocol. Full power. We weren't just saving Earth anymore. We were accepting a responsibility that no other species had been willing to face. The very qualities that had made us cowards. Our caution, our preparation, our willingness to run and hide, had prepared us for this moment. As the last remnants of the hunters disappeared into the storm network we created, the architects shared one final piece of information. The entity pursuing the hunters wasn't just a threat. It was inevitability itself, the heat death of the universe given form and purpose. And now, humanity's cowardly defense systems were all that stood between existence and entropy. The other species looked at us differently now. Not with mockery or disdain, but with a new understanding. Sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting the darkness, but in finding a new way to face it. And as we began preparing for what lay ahead, I realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been our ability to fight or flee. It had been our ability to adapt, to prepare, to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. The real war was just beginning, but this time we knew exactly what we were running from, and more importantly, we knew what we were running toward. The battlefield was eerily quiet now, except for the hum of damaged machinery and the faint crackle of distant fires. Humanity had done the impossible. Against overwhelming odds, the cowardly species known for avoiding conflicts at all costs had stood their ground and emerged victorious. Captain Alyssa Carter wiped soot from her face, glancing at the scorched remains of the alien war machines. She still couldn't believe it. Her team, made up of scientists, engineers, and other so-called cowards, had outlasted a force that had brought entire galactic empires to their knees. "Status report," she called, her voice steady despite the tremor of exhaustion creeping in. "We've got life support stabilized in sectors 3 through 7, came the reply from Sergeant Navarro, the team's logistics officer. "Power's at 40%, and evac ships are operational." It was more than Alyssa could have hoped for. When the Zorathian fleet descended upon the outpost 2 weeks ago, their intent had been clear: total annihilation. Humanity was supposed to surrender, flee, or die quietly. But something had shifted. Faced with extinction, the so-called cowards had leaned into their fear instead of running from it. They had turned it into a weapon. "Captain," called Dr. Elena Mahdi, the biologist who had led the team's breakthrough, "we've got confirmation from the AI cores. The neuro-dampening field worked. The Zorathians are in full retreat." Alyssa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The neuro-dampening technology, developed as a last-ditch effort, had turned the tide. The Zorathians, creatures who thrived on feeding off the terror of their enemies, were completely disoriented when humanity refused to crumble. "Good," Alyssa said, turning to face the remnants of her team. Most of them were bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, but they were alive. "This isn't just a win for us. It's proof." "Proof of what?" Navarro asked, tilting his head. "That bravery isn't about not feeling fear," Alyssa said, her voice soft but firm. "It's about what you do with it. They underestimated us because we were afraid, but we turned that fear into something they couldn't fight. That's what makes us human." Around her, the survivors nodded. They had all felt it, that spark of determination in the darkest moments. It wasn't about heroics or glory. It was about survival and refusing to be erased from existence. Elena stepped forward, holding a small data tablet. "Captain, there's one more thing you should know." "What is it?" Alyssa asked, already bracing herself. Elena hesitated. "The Zorathians weren't acting alone. We've intercepted communications. This was a test. A larger force is out there, watching, waiting to see if we're worth finishing off." For a moment, silence fell over the group. The victory felt fragile now, like glass teetering on the edge of a ledge. "What do we do?" Navarro asked. "We prepare," Alyssa said firmly. "We let them know that humanity doesn't run, no matter how scared we are. And if they come for us again," she looked out at the horizon, where the distant glow of retreating alien ships faded into the blackness of space, "they'll learn just how dangerous a cornered human can be." The team began to disperse, each member returning to their duties. There was no time to celebrate. Not yet. Repairs needed to be made, plans drawn up, and alliances forged. As Alyssa stood there, she couldn't help but think about what they had accomplished. Humanity, mocked and underestimated for so long, had proven that their so-called cowardice wasn't a weakness. It was a survival instinct honed over millennia, one that allowed them to adapt, outthink, and endure. The stars above were silent witnesses to their resilience. Alyssa didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. They had survived, and as long as humanity lived, they would keep fighting, fear and all.